Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. Aman Batish, Associate Consultant at the Department of Neurosurgery, Paras Hospital, Panchkula, and today we'll be talking about the management of supratentorial arteriovenous malformations. The true incidence is not known. Studies in different populations have shown an incidence ranging from 0.02 to 0.2%. These AVMs are 100 times rarer than aneurysms. Incidence of newly diagnosed AVMs vary from 0.89 to 1.34 per 100,000 persons per year. Commonly, they present with an hemorrhagic stroke, chronic headache, epilepsy, incidental asymptomatic lesions, or focal neurological deficits. The average annual AVM rupture rate is 2 to 4%, as seen from data from various cohorts. Previous rupture is the most consistent factor found to predict AVM rupture, doubling the annual rupture rate from 2.2 to 4.5. Other risk factors for the rupture of AVMs are deep location, infratentorial location, exclusively deep venous drainage, venous stenosis, venous ectasia. However, AVM size has not predicted hemorrhage in any study using multivariate models. No effect of AVM size. The histopathology of AVMs. The nidus is a compact angle of dysplastic, thin-walled vessels of varied length connecting feeding arteries to draining veins. The arterial blood is directly shunted into the draining veins without passage through the normal high arterial resistant capillary network. So the commonly seen vascular pathologies in the brain are cavernous malformations, arteriovenous malformations, venous malformations, and capillary telangiectasias. The arteries seen in the AVM nidus have a muscular and elastic laminae. The veins are arterialized, thickened with collagenous walls, and there is intervening gliomatous tissue, which is not seen in case of cavernous malformations. The imaging evaluation of these AVMs, initially a NCCT head is done, which in case of unbled or unruptured AVMs is usually normal. In case of ruptured AVMs, there is a ICH which can be seen. 25 to 30% of the AVMs present with calcification, and in the younger age group, intraparenchymal bleeds are more common. On CT angiography, we can identify the enlarged feeding arteries, the vascular nidus, and the enlarged draining vein. We can also identify intranidal aneurysms, dysplastic aneurysms of feeding arteries, venous varices, or stenosis of the draining vein. Small AVMs can be difficult to identify even on CECT. The MRI, the nidus typically presents as a low intensity flow void on both T1 and T2 weighted images. We can see edema or signs of previous hemorrhage on the MRI. The digital subtraction angiography, which is a dynamic study, is a study of choice for pre-operative evaluations of brain AVMs. Vascular shunting is the hallmark of AVM detection. Opacification of the vein during arterial or capillary phases of an angiogram can be seen on a DSA of an AVM. The feeding arteries, the nidus, the draining veins, the internal angioarchitecture, associated vascular lesions can be seen on a DSA. And it is also very good for follow-up in the management of these AVMs. So here we have a DSA. We can see the enlarged MCA branches as shown by the small arrow, the AVM nidus as seen by the large arrow, and the floor-related angiopathic changes as seen by, that is the stenosis, the curved arrow. So here we have the nidus, which is shown by the black arrow, and the enlarged vascular channels within the AVM can be intranidal aneurysm or venous ectasia, as shown by the open arrow. Further on, we can see the nidus, as shown, which is now filling, as shown by the large arrow, and there is early appearance of contrast in the enlarged cortical vein, as shown by the small arrows. Finally, we can see drainage into the dilated cortical veins, as seen by the small arrow. The cortical vein is draining into the superior sagittal sinus. Various AVM classifications have been described, but the commonly used classification is the Spitzer-Martin classification, which was first introduced in 1986. The patient selection is very important in the management of AVMs. The spectrum of patient pathology, the spectrum of patient presentation, the spectrum of surgical difficulty and risk, the spectrum of neurological outcomes must be taken into account, and judicious patient selection is the secret to good results. So we'll be briefly describing the Spitzer-Martin grading. We have points 1 to 3 for size, that is from 0 to 3 is given 1 point, 3 to 6 centimeters given 2 points, and more than 6 centimeters given 3 points. On the basis of location, we can give either 1 point for eloquent brain or no points for non-eloquent brain. And depending on the venous drainage, we can give 1 point for deep venous drainage and no points for superficial drainage. So we get the AVM grade by adding up the location, the venous drainage, and the size. The Spitzer-Martin grading can be further classified into Spitzer-Martin 1, Spitzer-Martin 2, Spitzer-Martin 3, Spitzer-Martin 4, and Spitzer-Martin 5. Spitzer-Martin 6 are the inoperable lesions. The Spitzer-Martin 1 and Spitzer-Martin 2 grades of AVM are usually treated with primary surgery. The Spitzer-Martin 4 and Spitzer-Martin 5 are the more complex AVMs. The Spitzer-Martin 3 were further modified by Lawton into 3 minus, 3 and 3 plus. The 3 minus are treated like Spitzer-Martin 2 and the 3 plus are treated like Spitzer-Martin 4. The various studies here suggested that Spitzer-Martin 2 and Spitzer-Martin 3 minus have similar mortality rates on treatment, and the Spitzer-Martin 4 and the 3 plus have similar mortality rates. So Lawton decided to treat Spitzer-Martin 3 minus like Spitzer-Martin grade 2 lesions and 3 plus like Spitzer-Martin grade 4 lesions. Lawton and Young further added a supplemental scoring system where they took into account the age of the patient, unruptured presentation, and the type of nidus into account. So thereby adding the Spitzer-Martin grading score plus the supplemental score, we had a combined score ranging from 2 to 10. A score less than 6 is a potentially acceptable surgical morbidity, and a score less than 4 has minimal morbidity. So in the neurological outcomes by Spitzer-Martin grade and the new supplementary grade, we can clearly see that scores of less than 6 had a lower morbidity rate, and scores more than 7 had a significantly higher morbidity rate when treated surgically. We also have an endovascular grading system, that is which is an adequate treatment modality on its own. Venola et al. Described the endovascular grading system, which took into account the AVM size, the number of feeding arteries, and the presence of pial versus perforating feeding arteries. So once we have decided to treat the AVM, we have various modalities for the management of AVM, which is either observation, surgery, radiosurgery, embolization, or a combination. So it would be nothing less than foolhardy to attack one of the deep-seated racemose lesions, as it was said by Harvey Cushing. One modality or a sequential combination is the ideal treatment for the patient. Different modalities are not interchangeable. So here we talk about the Aruba trial on apples, oranges, and Aruba. Aruba was a conservative trial, had a conservative strategy that would prove superior or non-inferior to a prophylactic best possible eradication of brain AVMs. So we had 116 patients undergoing intervention and 33% had events. 107 underwent medical management and only 10% had events. Hence, the outcome was medical management is superior to any intervention. However, the drawbacks of Aruba were imbalance in randomization of the subtypes of AVM based on the Spitzer-Martin grade, follow-up of only 33 months, which is too short a period to say anything about the natural course of the disease, lack of a standard plan for therapy, and no characterization of embolization and radiosurgery. So we can clearly see here that the patients undergoing surgery alone were on 5, those undergoing embolization alone were 30, those undergoing radiosurgery alone were 31. So there was a selection bias in the modality of treatment. We would also discuss about the medical versus invasive therapy for AVM related epilepsy. There is insufficient evidence available to determine if invasive AVM management is superior to AED only for controlling seizures. Further, an RCT of interventional versus medical management using standardized epilepsy specific pre surgical protocol is warranted. Microsurgery. AVM excision is the most effective treatment and is the gold standard. However, not every AVM is amenable to best treatment by surgery. Factors associated with increased surgical risk are large size of the AVM, deep venous drainage, deep locations, diffuse niders, feeders from deep perforating systems. AVM surgery is generally an elective procedure, and the ruptured AVMs we should generally wait for 4 to 6 weeks, allow for the hematoma to liquefy, the surrounding edema to resolve, and the dysregulated brain tissue to recover. In case of life-threatening hemorrhages, a gentle evacuation of hematoma without disturbing the AVM is required. To summarize the surgery, there should be a careful dural opening, circumferential nidus dissection layer by layer. Arteries should be tackled first and should be followed till the nidus and confirm their entry into the AVM. At least one major draining vein should be preserved till the end of the dissection. At the end of the dissection, this vein becomes bluish, proving that feeders have been eliminated. Finally, after hemostasis are achieved, the mean arterial pressure is increased by 15 to 20 millimeters of mercury above baseline for 10 minutes to look for any bleed, and a post-operative angiogram should be done. We can clearly see here that Spezza-Martin grade 1 and grade 2 lesions have a 4 to 10% mortality rate, which is low as compared to those for Spezza-Martin grade 3 and 4, which have a 30 to 40% mortality rate. Therefore, surgery is a relatively safe option for Spezza-Martin grade 1 and grade 2 lesions. Stereotactic radiosurgery. The goal is delivery of high radiation dose to the AVM nidus. Small AVMs, difficult to reach deep-seated AVMs can be treated with stereotactic radiosurgery. Superficial AVMs amenable to surgery have also been treated with radiosurgery. However, there is a 3 to 4 year latency interval between SRS and AVM obliteration. So, what we do in radiosurgery is we place the patient in a gantry and give stereotactically guided radiation to the AVM lesion. There is subendothelial and intermedial proliferation of smooth muscle cells producing concentric or eccentric narrowing of the vessel lumen. Complete obliteration of the nidus and venous drainage and angiography is a sign of complete obliteration of the AVM. Complete AVM obliteration reduces the cumulative residual lifetime risk of hemorrhage to 1% or less. So we have radiosurgery grading systems. What we commonly use is the modified Pollock and Flickinger system of grading these AVMs. So a low score of less than 1 is associated with excellent outcome, and a score more than 2 has average outcomes. So there is no benefit in waiting for hematoma volume reduction before SRS. There is a higher hemorrhagic risk associated with waiting for more than 6 months after hemorrhage. So the SRS should be done as early as possible. The obliteration rates vary from 60% to 80% in most studies. Lawton and al. Reported 87% obliteration rates for Spezza-Martin grade 1 and 2 lesions, 70% for AVMs in the basal ganglia, 64% for thalamic AVMs, and 70% for brainstem AVMs. Here we can see a frontal AVM supplied by branches of the middle cerebral artery and the anterior cerebral artery, draining into the superficial cortical veins. The AVM that is marked on the DSA and the MRI, and the patient was subjected to 25 grays of gamma knife radiosurgery. This is the DSA done 3 years after the radiosurgery, showing complete obliteration of the AVM. The disadvantages of radiosurgery are delay in the obliteration of the AVM, usually which it takes about 3 years for complete obliteration of the AVM, so there's a latency period during which there can be a secondary hemorrhage. The annual risk of rupture post radiosurgery is lower as compared to those not treated with radiosurgery, that is about 1.7%. Failure of radiosurgery can take place in case of a large nidus size greater than 10 cc, a high Spezza-Martin grade, or any technical errors. There can be adjacent brain injury because of the radiation. There's a very low incidence of post-GKRS seizures. Here I would also like to discuss with you a landmark paper published at the Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research in Chandigarh, which used dose fractionated gamma knife radiosurgery for large arteriovenous malformation. This is a proof of concept and early results, a substitute to volume fractionation. The results of dose fractionation for these larger AVMs, that is greater than 10 cc in size, is very good. Now, coming to the endovascular management. Endovascular management may not be it can be used as an adjunct to treatment, as an adjunct to surgery or gamma knife. However, this is not a permanent cure for these lesions. It enhances safety and efficacy of AVM treatment when applied as an adjuvant therapy. So the indications are adjuvant therapy prior to microsurgery, prior to radiosurgery, palliative therapy for symptomatic but inoperable lesions, and primary therapy for very small, surgically difficult AVMs that contain few arterial feeders. The commonly used embolic agents are the liquid and the solid embolic agents. What we commonly use is Onyx. This is the newest type of embolic agent, which is ethyl vinyl alcohol copolymer dissolved in DMSO tantalum powder for radiopaque visualization. It has very slow solidification rate as compared to N-butyl cyanoacrylate, and this allows for deeper penetration into the nidus and more control and prolonged injection of the embolic agent into the nidus. So here we have a case of a right thalamic AVM. We can see it is fed by the branches of the posterior cerebral artery and the posterior thalamus perforator as shown by the arrow. This patient underwent pre-op embolization to obliterate this perforator supply, and post-operative angiography shows complete obliteration of this perforator supply. Therefore, in cases where it may be difficult to treat these AVMs surgically because of a deep perforator supplying the AVM, the embolization can be used as an adjuvant to obliterate such feeders. So preoperative embolization helps in reducing the intraoperative time and the intraoperative blood loss. It converts a potentially high grade to a low grade Spezza-Martin grading, therefore converting an inoperable lesion to an operable lesion. It decreases the risk of post-surgical hemorrhage caused by change in hemodynamics, and also helps in obliterating deep arterial pedicles that are inaccessible during surgery. It can be used as an adjuvant to radiosurgery also. It reduces the size of the AVM, better outcome with radiosurgery. Occlude arterial feeders and intranidal aneurysms to reduce the risk of bleeding while awaiting the delay action of radiosurgery. Embolization prior may reduce the efficacy of radiosurgery, as the radiopaque embolic material may shield the nidus from radiation absorption. Also, sometimes embolization prior to radiosurgery may lead to out-of-field failures after radiosurgery. So, for Spezza-Martin grade 2 and 3, prior to surgery or radiosurgery, embolization can be done. For Spezza-Martin grade 4 and 5, usually embolization is not done. In case of Spezza-Martin grade 4 and 5, embolization may be done to reduce the arterial inflow to control the edema, and also patients with true steal phenomena to relieve the amount of shunting of blood through the AVM. So, what are the complications of embolization? We may have the local groin complications, that is a hematoma or dissection, contrast reaction and nephrotoxicity. We may have periprocedural hemorrhage, compromise of an outflow vein with subsequent elevation of the intranidal pressure leading to rupture of the AVM. So therefore one must avoid embolization of drain, particularly early during the procedure of the embolization. There may be a breakthrough phenomena, that is sudden increase in perforation pressure in the surrounding capillary bed after embolization of the nidus. An acute intracerebral ischemia infarction, that is arterial dissection and the thromboembolic disease can also occur. So we now recommend no treatment for most grade 4 and 5 unruptured AVMs. In fact, partial treatment may even worsen outcomes compared with the natural history of these AVMs. We do not support palliative treatment of AVMs except in the specific circumstances of arterial or intranidal aneurysms or progressive neurological defects related to the vascular field phenomena. Most 4 and 5 grade AVMs should be treated conservatively since they are generally too large for radiosurgery, present unacceptable surgical morbidity, and rarely can be occluded by embolization. Remember, a living problem is better than a dead solution. Thank you.